is that darn Cardi Jew? They're making us ravenous look horrible.
If you've enjoyed this program, please click like and subscribe.
Ni Yehovah Halakam Elodie Nobranan Amahe Yusam Balahe Yahako.
Shalom, and welcome to a special edition of Torah Watchman Show International, hosted by none other, your favorite Cardi Jew, Hakam Ya'ar ben-Emmett. I can't tell you how many people that mispronounce my name, and they're Jews. But anyway, God bless you. I have an outtake from the Parsha read of Matot-Masei. I already did a video of that. It's on YouTube. I remastered it, added some delicious details to it from about 1 year ago. I encourage you to go to that for the whole context of Parsha. The outtake is a discussion between Moshe and the two tribes of Israel, Gad and Reuben. Why I want to bring this out here, because I didn't have time to put it in the detail of the entire Parsha Sidra lecture that I did 1 year ago that I just mentioned. Now this one is about the brood of sinners. What am I talking about? You know, translation is a very problematic means of conveying the original author's meaning of a word or phrase. For instance, in Hebrew, it's a lot different than any other language. Its character set's a lot different. It's from the Semitic tongue. It borrows from the Canaanite tongue, even from the Egyptian tongue, a little bit of Phoenician, smaller alphabet per se, and it does not use all the advanced rules and syntax that you can find in English, which essentially English is a very complicated language to master and to learn. You have to go to college to really know how to be a good English speaker, much less writer, because it's a Frankenstein hybrid monster of multiple languages coming into one language framework. Meaning is everything, context is everything too. You know, in Hebrew, we believe with all our hearts and souls, especially Cardi Jews, that the words of the Torah, the 5 books of Moshe that were espoused by Moshe, by the living God, our divine creator, Yehovah Elakam, when he had face-to-face encounters with Moshe. Quickly, Moshe was completely conscious and lucid throughout all the conversation he had. I would say beginning roughly toward the end of stay of the Hebrews in Goshen, Israel, when God spoke to him, you know, in the burning bush for the first time, face to face in that bush, and of course speaking to him about fundamental laws, Pesach and Rosh Chodesh for the new month. So when we read Hebrew, we get more or less the original meaning of the author's intent. The author in this case is none other than our God. So when Moshe was speaking, he spoke sternly more times than not, in that he felt like he was a parent, or at least a grandfather of 2 million something people there. He said they were stiff-necked, they were stubborn. God even told Moshe many times the golden calf and other epic episodes with rebellion among the Jewish people, against the laws of God and everything else. God told Moshe, get away, I'm going to destroy this evil people. Rabbis did not like the word Rasha when it comes to anyone Jewish. And it goes back to the Lashon Hara, a scandal within our rabbinates, the rabbinical enterprise. They pretty much keep all their secrets classified, highly classified, to themselves in their inner circle. You cannot say anything wrong about them because, it's that accountability. They're elitist, and especially in the Middle Ages, going back in that time, we have more accountability now. But what I'm saying is, we need to trust the divine architect of God giving the words in Hebrew to Moshe, in which we do our best to understand it today with the help of the innovative, courageous efforts of Carthage Jews in the late 8th century, 9th century, 10th century in respect to Masoretic texts. In other words, we understand now the diction on how to pronounce certain Hebrew words, even in contemporary age of today, because we have developed vowels for all the consonants. Ancient Hebrew is all consonant, but with the dialects, you see like hyphenated symbols between compound words and things of that nature. The way to stress the sounding of the word in Hebrew toward the end or the beginning or the middle. That's what I'm talking about. So why am I going through this diatribe about linguistics and Hebrew syntax and context? In this parsha of Matot-Masei, this is the last sidra that I incidentally, in the book of Numbers, it finishes four books of the Torah, and we're moving to Davarim. But we're talking about the highest consequence for decision making amidst making vows before Jehovah. In fact, in the very beginning of this sidra, we talk about vows, about young women, young maidens, women to be married and things of this nature. The Israelites were on the last stage of their journey to the promised land, that is greater Canaan. They were now situated on the east bank of Jordan, within the sight of their final destination. For 40 years of wandering, this is all they were talking about and planning and sharing stories of their children and everything else. Many of them were excited for a new life out of that desert. But other tribes were a little bit more resistant, and I'll get into this. As you know, with the story of the 12 tribes, the 12 spies in Canaan that caused the judgment against Israel to wander in the wilderness of Zin for 40 years, only Caleb and Joshua were courageous enough to say, we believe in the God of Moses, and we will go and conquer the land as he's conquered the Egyptians, the Amalekites before us. But it says very clearly, when Gad and Reuben demanded an audience to meet with Moshe, and I guess it went all the way through the 70 judges and all the way up to Moshe because no one else could resolve this issue. Reminds me of King Solomon. They considered Moshe the wisest of all prophets there, the individuals, to resolve the most difficult and complex civil disputes, and that's what this was. Now, Gad and Reuben had acquired huge flocks of sheep, especially from conquered land of Ammon and the Moab and Midian, in those areas there. They captured the flocks of sheep from those nation states when the kings were conquered and the people were conquered by the Israelites. Their flocks grew so large they needed more grassy pasture land with a plentiful water supply. And on the east side of the Jordan River, and I'll show you a map back here where God was talking about, the tribe of Gad, these tribes were allocated, the tribal areas were allocated incidentally by God, and told Moshe, take a census among the people. Based on the population, you would get a larger piece of real estate for your tribal state in Israel. Now, Gad and Reuben differentiated themselves in that they wanted to stay on the eastern side of Jordan, where the other 10 tribes would go and fight head on the Canaanites, beginning with the city of Jericho. They asked permission to remain in that land, east of Jordan, in the land of Ammon and Gilead. Okay? That if you found favor in your eyes, we found favor in your eyes, and you looked at our life and you looked at our legacy over a period of time, we're asking you to allow us to stay in the land. We've been raising our sheep for the past several months, and they like I said, they occupied various herds of sheep from Ammonites and Moabites. And they said that we have an abundance of sheep. We say we have an abundance and we want more to grow our wealth and fortune. That is very close to materialistic type behavior. Now Moshe became incensed with anger. Anger that's different from when he took his staff and smote a rock that Miriam used before to gather water, that you're supposed to speak to the rock to get water. Moshe struck that rock in anger. He was punished by not allowing the joint tribe of Israel when Joshua would lead them over. But this angry outburst of Moshe, not admonished by God. In other words, this is self-righteousness and righteous indignation. God held his back. The point where Moshe had to go to God, calm down, and discuss this issue, what God wanted to do. Gad and Reuben, they did not know this at the time. The writing was on the wall for their future generations, and namely their future flocks and wealth, to a point where they were beginning to hoard the wealth. Okay? But Moshe countered them. He says, "What are you doing saying this to me?" Actually said, "You remind me of the problem we had with the 12 spies. No one wanted to go to Canaan. They said it was too insurmountable for us to conquer the land. And they said they even wanted to go back to Egypt because Moshe was signing their death sentence by doing battle with giants in Canaan." Gad and Reuben, they kind of kowtowed around and say, no, we're not talking about it. Hear us out. Proposal was potentially disastrous, and it could have created a mini civil war among the other tribes. Remember what happened to the Korach rebellion? Again, Moshe reminded the consequences of their ancestors who were judged and doomed a death sentence to wander in the wilderness of 40 years until they all die out. And we're talking to Generation X of Gad and Reuben, because their grandfathers died in the desert because of this same kind of disobedience before God. Gad and Reuben, I believe they were disingenuous about their request, and a little bit altruistic too, in that they were not being very truthful and the real reason why they wanted to be behind. I think they were afraid of putting on military armor, sword, shield, all the armaments you need to go to war. I think they were not very militaristic. I think they were just peaceable people that just loved being in the grassy fields and tending their sheep, and I don't blame them for that. So this was the nation of Israel. It wasn't the nation of Gad and Reuben. It was a nation of the 12 tribes of Israel. And they would either win together or die together. At the weakest link of the chain. And when I read this over and over again, and when I heard this spoken at the Bema today, when the parsha was read in Hebrew, and I read some of the commentaries and everything else, I'm going to give you the closest English word-for-word translation from the Hebrew. The Hebrew is actually what Moshe said, and I'll read it to you. Tevrabut al-Nashaim ta'ayim. That means, and I've looked up several ways of transliterating this, in the broader context of the sentence where this phrase comes from, and here you are, a brood of sinners, standing in place of your fathers, and making Yehovah Elohim even more angry with Israel. Not learn any lessons of the generations of Jews that perished in the desert. Turn away from him now, he will again leave all of his people back in the wilderness in desolation, and you will be the cause of their destruction. Moshe was blunt, honest, and confrontational at this, and I understand that many rabbis in the Middle Ages and even Chabadniks today, they do not like words of Rasha for evil and talking about other Jews. In other words, and Reuben and Gad and the others, you remember the story where the sons had problems with Joseph, and they were innocent. Joseph was the one that was behaving and acting out and that kind of thing. And I've read what Rashi said all this. Instead of saying Judah's heart was filled with Rasha, it was with evil intent to do premeditated murder against his brother Joseph. Many rabbis in the 1800s and so on, they added their flavor when they wrote their own Mishnah Torah in the commentaries. They took the phrase brood of sinners to society of sinful people, and embellished it and made it not so negative and not so angry. God is conveying a message to you today, whether to the news media, what's happening in Israel, or you hear something spoken about from your rabbi or some other individual, a Torah scholar, someone who's giving you their take, and then it's full of YouTube rabbis talking about this same subject. If you hear them saying, reading this Torah Parsha, the Sidra to you, and they say something different than you know what the Hebrew says, you know what they're doing. They're placating the problem. They're trivializing the anger that Moshe had every right to feel at that time about Gad and Reuben essentially declaring independence from the other 10 tribes, their brothers, in committing treachery. And if you read later on, when Joshua, the books of Joshua, and when he does battle with the people in Jericho, they called Gad and Reuben over from where they were in the grassy fields there, east of Jordan, to come and join. And that was a compromise that God allowed them. Now, Moshe did not want to permit this. He needed every able-bodied soldier, 600,000 strong soldiers, to be among the ranks and the armies of Israel to fight these insurmountable tasks of conquering these Canaanites called cities. He said, okay, compromise with them, use them as a reserve force. Even today in Israel, we have IDF reservists, and you have active IDF and IF military soldiers too. I used to be active duty, but I worked with the Air Force Guard and also with the Air Force Reserves too. So I know when the reserve component, your weekend warriors, that kind of thing, you come in a time of war, when the governor of the state activates you, or when the President of the United States activates you, like for the Gulf War conflict and everything else, okay? So this is what eventually happened. But the focal point of this Torah Parsha, Matot-Masei, outtake, says very clearly in the Torah, hold you accountable for your actions and behavior, for the vows you make. Remember the vows that all of Israel made before that encounter on Mount Sinai, when literally the King of the universe lit up the sky above them, above the mountain peaks of Mount Sinai, and fire and lightning and earthquakes and a sounding shofar. And were afraid and were fearful of God at that time, and could ask Moses, please don't let God speak to us. We are so undone before his presence. Leave a vow that we are your people. They sang with Miriam after they parted the Red Sea on the other side, the song of the sea, and jubilation and hallelujah choruses and things of that nature. praising God and reaffirming their vows. So critically important when you make them before God. Very important with Gad and Reuben. And later, half of Manasseh, the tribe of Manasseh, joined Gad and Reuben. And I'll show you a map of that too. I'm trying to say, not rebellious tribes, but these independent-minded tribes were the first ones to be destroyed by the time of King Solomon's son took over the kingdom of Judea. Syria eventually came in the time of Hezekiah and decimated the 10 tribes of Israel. Half of Manasseh, that other half who did not choose to go over with Gad and Reuben, they chose eventually to move down in southern Israel and join Ben-Emmett, Levi, and Judah, and they survived to this day. And we say amen about that. Joshua, that Gad and Reuben actually set up sacrificial offerings like a mini temple site there. This is an abomination according to Joshua, and he asked him why he did it. They claimed, and they were being altruistic, not very honest for this. They said he was afraid of their declaring independent. You were not allowed to build any kind of sacrificial temple or altar apart from going through Joshua first and the Levites. The Levites controlled. They weren't Levites. But they actually, and you could read about it, much later on in the future, after Joshua led the 12 tribes over, they actually built an altar there. And they claimed that they wanted to show they're thankful for Moshe allowing them to stay in the land. Their brothers and sisters on the western side of the Jordan River, out of gratitude, they had a modim, a sacrificial offering for that. One decision that is problematic, and it's based on solely you want to get more wealthy, you want to get more rich, you already have an abundance of your livestock now, but you want even more. Now, admittedly, this land was given to Israel. To this day, Jordan, the nation of Jordan, occupies east of Jordan land that was given by God to Moses to the children of Israel today. Time it was very precarious, and it was very dangerous and treacherous for their armies, and they had a lot of people there, potential armies, not to be at that ready force in the central part of Israel at the moment's call of the shofar. I hope you appreciated this outtake of Torah Parsha Matot-Masei, because I wanted to bring out that at that time, Moshe was very angry at Gad and Reuben, and for good reason. They made excuses, but there were consequences, maybe not for them in the present time of that conversation, but later on their sons and grandsons and future generations would be decimated by the action they took that day, because their heart was not in the right place. When you are hoarding and you get to a point where you have so much and you want more and more and more, your security is not in the Lord your God. Your security is in your own works of your hands. There's all kinds of discourse within Israel today. Before October 7th massacre occurred, you remember the last year, thousands and thousands of Jews and non-Jews were in Tel Aviv protesting essentially against the new government voted by the people of Israel under the leadership of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu over judicial reform, but it was actually they wanted him out as Prime Minister because he won by working with the Torah parties, the center of right, conservative-minded parties, religious right, essentially, and they wanted a secular society to continue Tel Aviv. And they loved the Supreme Court there because they had secured the decisions, and many of these seculars, and I'm not talking about secular Zionists, I'm talking about people with the blue and white party in Israel, with Peace Now, Cold Pink, Free Palestine, they were actually with these same anarchist groups today. I'm not here to be angry at these rebellions in Israel today. That doesn't mean God is not just as angry. My takeaway here and my conclusion is that we are never ever to add or take away at any time from the Torah, even if those messages cause us to quake in our heels and cause us to double check our own lives and have a bad feeling like a guilty conscience. I've always wondered in Ashkenazim versus Sephardim and the Haftarah's reading, the Sephardi Jews and rabbis there, they read all the Torah Parsha contextual reference in the prophets and the kings and judges, the thing like we had the prophet Jeremiah this time. And sometimes you have a separate Ashkenazi version of reading, and then you have separate Sephardim. That is because Chabadniks, especially something is read on Sabbath, they don't want a lot of negativity there. They will take the blessings of God, but they don't want to hear the admonishments of God that the Jews are Rasha and evil, intent, and sinners and things of this nature. That's what Mashiach called Gad and Reuben, a brood of sinful people, a culture, a society of sinful people. They don't like that. Listen, Moshe was brutally honest. God is brutally honest with us in his black and white truths are eternal and divine. And all Sephardi Jews should say amen to this because we are Torah purists. If we're going to learn any lessons of Torah, we need to be honest with ourselves and seek God's wisdom when we read in Hebrew that Torah lesson. For that week, for that day, for that year. Well, Shalom Aleichem, Hakam, Ya'ar ben-Emmett, signing out again. I love you so much. I can't wait to see you again. But until the next time, missing that red-haired Sephardi Jew, Ya'ar ben-Emmett. I'm missing you too because you are my virtual family. And I just want to say God bless you. There's so many people that are worried about many things in the world today. I talked to someone today. They said this synagogue is such a blessing to me. I wish I could take it with me. This is B'nai Noach I was talking to. I'm working with him. I said, well, wear your kippah outside the shul and you'll take that same lovely feeling you have in the shul back to your home. I'm always reaching out to other people. If you think you have big insurmountable tasks in your life, there are people with worse problems than you. Greet them with a smile of love and say shalom. Well, you take care and God bless you.